Well, don't focus on the orange overall, but instead respect the institutions that ensure that we're all equal before the law. Well, this is a plea by one of the country's leading religious leaders, Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba. Archbishop Makgoba has lent his support to the Defend Democracy campaign, and the group held an online rally this weekend calling on former President Jacob Zuma to respect last week's Constitutional Court order. He joins us now. Archbishop, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. When you look at the current situation where a Constitutional Court ordered the arrest of a former president, but he's still not in jail, what are your concerns?
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren, and welcome back to eNCA. I must say I am desperately sad that it has come to this. Nearly a decade ago, I told Mr. Zuma that South Africa wants a leader who sets an example by taking responsibility, a leader who is transparent and who makes decisions based on values, particularly those of the Constitution. But he has done none of these. As the law calls him to account, he twists and turns, changes his story, and attacks the pillars of the democracy he fought to bring. So that is an indictment. But I want to say the country needs peace, but peace must be based on justice, not on defiance of our Constitution and its values. And so that is what I want to say. But the fundamental question for me is, does the former president believe in the rule of law? Or like apartheid leaders, does he believe a leader can do what he likes, whatever the law says? So even at this late stage, as he goes to the court, I really appeal at this late hour. Mr. Zuma, I speak to you heart to heart. And those that are misleading you to ignore the law, step back from destroying what is left of your legacy by going down in history as someone who has betrayed the democratic ideals for which so many died, for which you have fought for. Please cooperate with the legitimate organs of the state which you swore an oath to serve. I think that's what I want to say, Lara.
Archbishop, that's a very strong and heartfelt plea to the former president. Lastly, is there a group of pastors in Cape Town, well, there is a group of pastors that are very aggrieved at churches being shut down during lockdown level 4, saying that for many, the church is a spiritual home that they desperately need right now, not just for spiritual guidance, but for food, for shelter, and some kind of support. What's your response to that?
My response again is based on values. All our biblical texts are very clear that we ought to respect the sanctity of life. We can't gamble with God's people. We know that population immunity is far from being achieved. We know there is nationalism when it comes to vaccination. We're very far in terms of vaccinating God's people. So let's not take a chance for the sake of us as leaders. Let's respect the dignity of God's people. Keep them at home if we can, feed them at home, send those texts, send those Zooms, send a written text, do a careful visitation with your mask on, shutting, opening the windows, washing your hands, and encouraging them to vaccinate. So I'm not sure this is the time to quibble whether to open or not to open, because the church, I see it as having two pillars. It is the church gathered and the church scattered. And so I think the pastors are fighting for the church gathered, but the church scattered, it's still the church. And so I would also appeal to say, can the value of the dignity of each of our parishioners come first rather than play ball with God's people? So I would propose that we remain shut as we do ministry differently.
Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba there with a very heartfelt message calling on former President Jacob Zuma to obey the rule of law and to behave in a dignified manner for the safety of all the people who are supporting him outside the gates of eNCA and for democracy in this country. Thank you, Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba.